record, and we had a good meeting the other day. I think it was a good meeting. I don't know whether you felt there's a lot of things there which might issue were directly at you personally. Did you feel threatened?
The question about feelings, I still am confused, but I went away and I felt, God, I got a beating. That's how I felt. That was the phrase that I had as I went off to cook and get, just hurry up and cook, because my dad was not too happy, but he didn't shout or anything, and then he ate by himself, like I wasn't invited. Well, I had to pray.
4 hours late. 4 hours
Yeah.
late for cooking.
No, I should have started at least around 8:30 or 9, not 9:30. It's really bad. And then my brother, I think he it's like typical siblings who don't get along as such, but even he was being nice to me. So I think I must have looked quite miserable. And how did the meeting I organized and got dressed up for in my interview clothes go so badly? It didn't go wrong. I think.
Okay, don't take go badly. I mean, you're putting value judgments on that. Let's talk
Yes.
about your when you say you think you got a beating. You felt like you had been beaten up. Did you?
That's what I thought at the time. I've seen some of the recordings since then.
Okay, no problem. Now, when in terms of Black Lives Matter and all of that kind of thing, it's been said that a lot of people need to listen to other points of view, listen to people who have other points of view, have to learn from that. And then the important bit is the reflection on that and say, well, okay, what is it that how is it that I, as a privileged person, am being seen by others in this way, and what should I then do to change that perception? And in some ways, you have become a privileged person. In some ways, I'm not saying that you are a privileged person. I'm not saying that you're equivalent of white racists and misogynists, but in some ways you are. You've now become. You want to become someone who is a leader, someone who has got power. But what did you listen, what did you learn from that meeting, and how did you reflect on it?
What I learned is what you guys were telling me, this can't go on YouTube. I had a look, and I think the overall impression I got yesterday was I looked like a child in if I compare it in presence of, I think we can say her name, Marvina. She was self-assured leader, and I was at times, I've got some self-confidence, but I wasn't a leader. And also, I think I want to be a leader. I want to be a leader. Is what summer of 2020 Unison criticized me for, because I saw the BLM leader, all of that, and I thought, I know what I want to do. I'll just call myself leader of the volunteer group. It was a bit childish at age of then 35, but and with this group, I didn't think it came out of nowhere. Okay, fine, the one of the UCU, of course, leaders, as it were, she said, set up a WhatsApp group for our organizing meeting. So we did. And then, okay, let's go around finding people. So I did. And one of the sad things is, like, in December, I was feeling quite miserable. Yeah. So I didn't set out to be a leader. It was more like doing things, getting off the ground. But in December, like, at times, I think I was very careful for people not to think that it's Jim who is the leader. But then I was reflecting, like, how I intercepted brother A and said, then we can say his name, Brother Akish, and say, oh no, it's not Jim, it's me. But it could be that it's not that necessarily he's thinking you set up the group. I think everybody now knows the work was done by me. Is in that he might gravitate towards you because he's seeing you as a respectful person who is facilitating this meeting, and we know
That's Brother Akish's perceptions and things like that. So that's how he's, and I can see that as well in that, okay, he says, here's this white chap who, deserves all this professor and this, and all of that power and privilege. And yes, I can see that. And, it's difficult for him, but we're not talking about Akish. We're not talking about his perception. We're talking
No.
about, see, this is where really, let's step back from that meeting, right? Before that meeting, you remember what you were like a year ago?
A year ago, I
What have
reached
you
out to
learned
you for
then?
help,
Yes,
isn't
exactly.
it? I
Yeah,
reached out
exactly.
to you
A
for
year ago,
help, and I wanted to go to that
your
awful
ideas were
EDI
similar. Your
meeting.
ideas were similar, and you had the same understanding of racial discrimination, the same understanding of Islamophobia, the same understanding of disability and other things. But what have you learned since then? And then we can come up to that meeting and say, well, what have you learned from that meeting?
What I've learned since then is not to seek people's approval, because people won't approve of you in the end, like how the LSHTM colleagues turned against me. Don't look for saying, how great am I? Here are a bunch of screenshots with colleagues' name saying, yep, we think Aysha is great, because IWGB used that against me, didn't they? And the colleagues turned against me.
Let's not talk about IWGB. Let's talk about you. This is all
What
about
I've
you.
learned.
This is what you've learned. Yes.
What I've learned. So I've learned not to seek people's approval. I've learned that not to expect people's loyalty. And I think it's not just for the recording, isn't it? Like right now, we're still a team of two. No, everybody washed their hands off. Well, it's not they wash their hands off. It's the reality of activism world. You don't get many genuine working relationship.
Do you think Marvina and Kaivan washed their hands of you?
No.
No.
I was thinking like how I, with one of the where from Cake from France was going to come from that lovely ally, and she never, then she, when I criticized IWGB, she backed off, and I've never heard from her. And I had so much confidence in her, like, oh, she's so lovely, and she radiated so much warmth in her email, in herself. And then when it came to the crunch, she wasn't up to scratch, frankly, because it's about, do we tackle unions or not? It's about me, isn't it?
It is.
And I love all things about me, but for some reason I'm struggling.
You're struggling here, because if you think all of those people and you can put them all down there, the people from BLM, the people from what's her name from from London School, and lots of those people from France and other people who've come to your group. So the fact that you've got, and you could list off here probably 50 or 100 people who've been very enthusiastic and come along, and then they've left.
Do you mean the WhatsApp group?
The WhatsApp group and other groups, people who've supported you. As you say, you can't expect loyalty, but losing some people is bad, but losing lots of people, what have they been put off by?
I think they've been put off by my direct way of fighting the unions. I think the French person, let's say, she was put off that I attacked IWGB, and Jody obviously would have called her up, and she decided to defend the union. It's like, oh, it's a little union. Why did you do that? And she would have written that email because he prompted her, and she would have cited at the fact with the union. But my conviction is they were wrong, because each time these people are protecting the union, but it's about what Marvina says, you can't go around fighting, isn't this what you've been saying all along? You can't go around fighting. I think.
No, yeah, okay, carry on. I'll defend myself.
Yeah, I think I take the the principle. I think my principles are correct, and therefore I take pride in
Yeah,
how I go about it. And as far as I'm concerned, I've now even got to a point where I think what I do is great. And it's
yeah,
obviously not. Once again, another new group of people are saying the same thing. Don't go around fighting people in this direct way. And you've
yeah.
been saying it all along. So
So
I can't really put, like, if I think about Jay from, let's say, um, LSHTM, I could always put her in a box. So I was never sure of her. I was, eventually I had my suspicions, blah, blah, blah. I can always put her in a box and say, oh, she was like picking on me, blah, blah, blah. But and and the French person, I put her in a box as well and said, well, she wasn't wise enough to realize, the issues with union, because I think union racism is not something anybody understands unless you are a black and brown trade unionist. It
yeah,
is a rarity that, because number one, it's a dying thing, union. Number two, yeah, okay, I won't go off at a tangent. So I think this is the time point where I think if I want to go to the next level, do I start to change? And I think the task that Marvina has given me, this idea of reconciliation meeting, the idea of going back to that UCU committee where there is a door open for me. They do let
yeah,
me into those meetings.
yeah, yeah.
I'm able to speak. They hate
Okay,
me.
let's not get on to what you should be doing next until we've really gone into this aspect of what has happened in that meeting and what happened. So, I'm just going to sort of say some of the things that happened over the last year before the meeting. Okay, and I think what we did when we started working together, we said, look, actually, you had some very powerful ideas, messages to present to people about racism, which, about insourcing, about making sure we respect other people, which I think have been validated over time. And what we worked on and we said is your messages are too complicated and too threatening. You're putting people off. And so you've modified, you've changed the way that you present your messages. You've realized that all of these engagements have rules. You know some of those rules now. You don't know them all, but you've been learning those rules. How do you engage with management? How do you engage with other activists? How do you engage with unions? How do you engage? And those kind of things, each of them have slightly different rules because people demand things. The solidarity thing. They have their set of rules which are codified, and you have to sort of put your hand up and you speak. And at first, you didn't want to do that. Now you put your hand up, you speak. You may speak more than they want, but that's okay. You're still following the rules to some degree. And you've learned all of those rules, and you've started to realize that you can't just, you know, if you're, when you're a kid, you stand up on a box and start shouting at people and punching people, and that gets you into trouble. Then you learn the rules of how to play in a playground. You learn the rules. And that's what's happening here is you're learning the rules of how to get your message across in a much more effective way. And I think we've done great. I think, sorry, I'm egotistical here. I think that you've
I don't
learned
know
a
if I
lot.
have changed. I was going to say, Jim, I haven't changed at all.
You haven't changed a bit, but you've learned how to, nothing inside you has changed, right?
I'm not
But
sure even if I learned how to. I feel like you being there to support me has enabled me
yeah,
to do
yeah,
things, get things
and
done.
yeah,
And by
yeah,
getting things done, I've learned, or I've found what I've been looking for all along,
yeah,
which
yeah,
was to, it's a bit weird, but if I can make myself happy, is like, yeah, I'm a charismatic person. And I think Marvina said it without prompting. And you said I'm becoming that. And how do you measure charisma? If you're going around recruiting people, you are. But then I think this is, was she saying humility pill? Yeah, this is the time where you say, yeah, so I go around recruiting people, then what? And
yeah.
that's where we're
Okay.
stuck.
This is where we're getting on to the meeting in a minute. But I just
Mm.
want to say one thing before that. You're a charismatic person, and I think there aren't, there's not a lot of charismatic people, but there are, I mean, it's only 1 in 1,000 who really have that ability to think through and deliver those kind of messages. But there are still 1,000, in the whole population, there are a lot of charismatic people.
Can I
And
just
most,
say that means so much to me to think I could be one of the rare people, but it's also very
Yeah,
difficult for me to believe because I know when I see a charismatic person, I can identify them. And the classic one would be, as much as I dislike them, that current LSHTM director would be one of those people because he's a
yeah,
good public
exactly.
speaker. He's not, and I'm going to, let's be frank, if we started talking about the old one was a big shot person who mixed with the world leaders or people.
Yeah.
This one isn't, but this one is a good public speaker. So I think this one is
There's,
charismatic.
there's
But I guess the
different
other
sorts.
one is, isn't it? There's different types of charisma. How
Exactly.
how would the
Yeah.
other one mix with those people if he wasn't charismatic?
So he was charismatic to some people, and some people he portrayed, and he really developed that. And charisma is, one person's charisma is another person's enemy. It's like a freedom fighter. You know, one person will say yes, they're a powerful, charismatic leader of the freedom fighters, and the other person say he's a terrorist. Exactly.
But
So
Jim, the person who's going to call the other person terrorist, not secretly, but behind the scenes, even they appreciate the other
they
person's
respect.
charisma.
Yep.
Because that
Yep.
I've learned is that these white people, it's not that they don't recognize us, they recognize us very much because the way that Solidarity Committee roll out certain BAME committee members, the cool ones, to do the chairing, and I won't name them, but they're in our group, what they're up to. They'll utilize you. Well, what the issue is, they're not putting they're not giving those people, they're keeping very much them and even the younger white people out of the table.
Yep.
When it comes to deciding what they're doing, it's all about them deciding.
Yep. And so what happens is that those people in that situation, they have enough of them to say, okay, let's say I'm not going to be the leader, someone else can be the leader, someone who looks like me and has the same qualities and I know they have the same background, the same viewpoints, the same agenda to put forward. And they can share that around because there's 10 of them, there's only one of you. So they can reinforce that, their messages, because they've got that quantity. That's what's happening with the current Conservative government. The message is being reinforced by those people in power, in media, in different ways, because they've got all of those mechanisms to their hand, right? Now you're learning that you have to then try and get into that and present that. Now, what I was going to say here, yes, so your charisma, fine, but in the people with charisma, only 1% or less will actually get to be a good leader, actually get to even be considered to be a leader, because they don't know what the rules are to engage. They don't know how to influence people. They don't know how to make allies, make friends, how to achieve their goals. They know what their goals are, but they can't achieve them because they don't have that understanding of the system, right? Now, a year ago, you had no understanding of that system, and you've learned a lot of things that's made you able to work at a higher level, I think. I don't know, maybe
You think I've learned.
I think,
I don't know what I've learned. I've learned when it came to IWGB and Geordie, I
yeah,
I decided to be, I understood that in order to be kept, I needed to do as he says and make sure everything is checked past him, because that's the rule I learned from Unison days.
yeah,
But now I walk away feeling quite like uh, thinking it was very stifling because
yeah,
right now working with you and we'll give the other person a nickname Onglesi, as I don't know, it was same way. He left me to it. He left me and let me get on. And I think in some ways it's discrimination, because why do certain people have to check
oh,
everything and not
sure.
other people? But I think, like, I look back on it now, I think, okay, if I tackled Islamophobia with IWGB in the proper engagement way, by following their complaints procedure and by being like I'm a bit concerned about that, not write them an angry email. Here's some testimonies I've collected. Then I probably would have got the change through. They would have probably would have allowed that Muslim officer to be voted, because just like Marvina says, nobody wants to look bad. Nobody wants to look. And I could have even engaged on that day when Alex guy, their president, called me. He says, "Oh, can we have a talk?" Instead, but then my thinking on that day was right.
Keep going, and go on.
My thinking was right, because I didn't want to meet Alex on my own, because my idea was we must meet him together with the colleagues, and that's when it went wrong. But maybe I should have engaged with their rules. Their rules was you can have a conversation with that person. They've chosen you. You're the one who's complaining. Just pick up the phone and see how far you can get.
And you have those conversations one-to-one with him, and then you can say, right, now is the time to go to the colleagues and get everybody on board. And that's the kind of thing that happens, is that there is a way forward. And as you say, you could have, if you would have gone down that road, you probably could have got somewhere with IWGB, right? But having now, do you think your email to open a discrimination case will get anywhere? What will you do with that? Is that, can you?
I don't know. They don't play ball. And then the other thing they might come with would be like, oh, well, appoint one for LSHTM. And then my argument would be, no, we voted at a branch level. So in which case you get one centrally, or you get one for every single workplace. And, I'm thinking, but the other thing.
Are you going to get anywhere with it?
Very simple question. No.
Okay.
I think at some point I just need to stop paying my 10 quid.
Yep, that's right. So the actions that you can do are to just say, look, that was a life experience for you. You've learned something from it, and you've got that out of it. You're not going to change them. They're not going to, it's difficult to see how that could actually make any change at all, either to you or to people who are union members in IWGB. Right. Okay. So you've got to learn that. You've got to learn when to take your victories, when to take your defeats, when to walk away from things which are not going in the way that you want to do. Right.
Yeah, so you're right, Jim. That's one way of thinking, isn't it? The workers, the colleagues work 50, 60 hours. They're not interested in being a Muslim officer. Whenever they need problem, they'll come to IWGB. IWGB will fix it. And what I was going through was pointing out was a fundamental thing. And those four colleagues that witnessed it, and 5 or whatever, they knew the unfairness they saw, but they don't have it in them to constantly challenge. But the thing is, Jim, I was thinking, you know what? I broke all those rules. But at the time, like Unison, it was like, oh, you should get along with a team. Or like IWGB, that's not how you fight the union. But ultimately, I think, Jim, isn't Allah showing? No, it is Allah showing that ultimately worked out for the best. Because if I didn't fall out with Unison and I kept as a good working member, we would have got nowhere. And if I didn't fall out with IWGB, given, with mental health break, anyway, I would have continued with the, committee, because this sense of belonging, a place you are. And I would have got nowhere, because what I'm doing now is a bit more exciting. Don't know where we're going to go, but it's nevertheless been quite exciting.
And that's why, you've got that charisma, because you can say, well, okay, you can see that you go forward in a different way, in a different place, and you're not just prepared to be a member of a committee. Fine. Okay, so I think this is some positive stuff. And I think you've learned quite, although you say you haven't learned anything in the last year, you've learned a lot, right? Okay, fine.
No, Jim, I wasn't saying I haven't learned anything. I just think, do I actually listen to you? Because all I tend to do is what I get from you is I have a team of 2. And because even though I'm very good at saying, no, this is my group, I built it up, it couldn't have been, this is a genuine humility pill, as it were. God willing, it genuinely couldn't have been done without you, isn't it? I needed that team of 2 so we can invite, get that Sana Begum off the ground. And once I had, yes, go ahead, Aysha. And then I was like, run off with my thoughts and, inviting people middle of the night. And once we saw the people, we were on a roll. We were onto something.
But okay. So we've learned quite a lot. I think we've learned quite a lot between us. I've learned a lot from you, and you've learned something from me, right?
I
And
learned from you, I need a team. I learned that in this activism, what is it that matters? It matters people and the genuineness.
oh,
And all I
well,
learned is there's only one person who's given me all this time, and that's you.
no.
People have given me time, but not like you, though.
You're trying to flatter me. You're trying to put my
No,
ego.
no, 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 never.
So,
I always
so
look out for my own ego.
but no, but, well, exactly. So I'm just going to say. So now we're going to get on to this meeting that we had on Thursday, and I'm just going to say something about my feelings as well. When people were laying, when people were saying these things to you and saying what we should be doing, and I was thinking, yeah, part of me was saying, yes, this is my fault because I'm your mentor, and we haven't gone over this. We haven't touched on this topic of ego and how to build what is it that leaders need to be. And I was thinking, I've been doing this back, but that's me in my ego saying that I should have been doing all of this. This is my job to tell you what to do, right? And it's not. And so therefore, I'm not going to. I mean, I felt bad about and I realized that actually what we're doing, we're laying the foundations over the past year, getting various things in place. Now, if you want to make that next step to becoming a proper leader, let's think about what was said in that meeting on Thursday, right? And think about the things that River said, as well as the
We
things that
can't mention her name, but it's okay.
you can't. Well, this video, you're not going to post this video, are you?
Yeah, that's the hope. I think we can get away with posting it. We accidentally mentioned her name, but it's fine.
Okay, sorry.
We'll post it because I think this is like really gold stuff. I think if anybody understands this mentorship, then they will.
Yeah. But think about the things that everybody said in that meeting and say, well, what is it they were trying to say? And how do you have to reflect upon who you are to be able to become a leader?
What were people saying?
Were you
And
listening?
then, yes, I listened. I'm now writing it down because you said 3 steps. What were people saying? What I have to reflect and what I have to do next.
Sure.
Was that your question? Have I left anything out?
Yeah. I think that's good. What did you and what did you learn from that? So what did you learn, and how did you reflect upon what you learned? Yeah, that's right. So those 2 points are together. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Did you say how do I reflect or what do I reflect?
What what did you learn, and how did you reflect upon what you learned in order to be able to understand more about yourself, more about your own, what you're feeling, what you are, who you are?
How did I reflect? Who am I? Yeah. What I feel about myself, is that it? One of your questions?
That's part of it. Yeah.
What I feel about myself. I think I'm rephrasing your questions.
That's okay.
What people were saying, they were saying that they felt upset. If we talk about one participant, that they and then I went away and I thought they had invested in the group, they changed our icon, etc. They took active participation, and then for somebody to say, "Hey, if this 50% of this setup of this group is all about my ego," I think, and I think people, is this me being quite clever or is this me being genuinely honest? I think maybe I see this word ego as a positive thing, and whereas everybody else's view of the word is negative. And that comes across, I'm going to make excuses when English isn't your first language, or you take a word and you say, I see it positive. The whole world who knows this word and to whom it belongs to a bunch of people saying, no, it's a bad thing. Or I genuinely think ego is an okay thing. And then now I need to align myself with the people. And then that maybe I got it wrong. What I was saying was this group.
No.
has enabled me to do the things I always dreamed of, is going around speaking and getting people, and 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 that's what it enables to achieve. So it's actually, this group is empowering me, and it's not just
Yep.
Brother Akish, it's myself too, very much.
Okay, now that I think is a very important point. Ego, and ego can be a positive thing. Now, if you go back in other languages, and the Greeks, I think the only one the only one I know is I learned it at school, is about Greeks, and they had two words for ego, right? They had two words for what we call in English ego. One is the internal ego, and the other is the external ego. Okay, and the internal ego, think about Marvina, who was giving you some good advice there, and think about the way that she displays her ego. Think about that ego is about self-confidence. It's about knowing who you are and being able to be strong to present that and things like that. And that, I think, is the kind of ego which is going to be very, very, very positive. It's a strong center. Okay. And if you think then about the external ego, how does that come across to people? That comes across as in your face, you are right, you want an award, you want this, you want them to do this. Telling people what to do without having any consideration for that. And that was the message that I think came across on one person's comments to you about that is not going to make you give you any followers. No one's going to follow you. No one's going to become your colleague, your ally, your friend, your disciple, because they're going to be put off by that. Okay. Obviously, you need that strong self-confidence inside you, but you mustn't present your external ego in a way that puts people off. And I think what you've had for a long time is a soft center with little self-confidence and little faith in your own abilities. And you've displayed the external qualities that you think are strong to other people. You've got to turn that around and say, actually, strength is inside. Externally, I can be much more accommodating.
Not flattering you, a bit like you.
No. No, that's not the purpose of this, to say that, I'm such a great person. No.
No.
The trouble is that there's a lot of things there that, I don't do myself. And yeah, but, and I don't just.
I think I get it now, Jim. In that meeting, I could have said, okay, so a number of you think this award is not a good idea. It'd be good to hear from you. Perhaps, it doesn't, and I seem to think. And the other way I could have presented it, Jim, is, what is the value of this made up award in this group? I think I didn't quite explain it. It's the idea of, like, how teachers give awards to students or whatever. It's to celebrate people, isn't it? It's to validate them, because union structure lacks that. So
do you see yourself as a teacher or as a student? Do you, teacher gives the award to the student. You want to be a student and learn and get an award?
You're too clever, Jim. Sorry, I didn't see that coming. But yeah, you're right. Do I want to create an environment where we're celebrating others? Yeah, that's the idea. I wish we had more Brother Akish's, but I don't think they're all going to come in the same format as Brother Akish or myself. They're coming in different formats, like Kay, because Kay enjoyed it. She was there for all that hours, and she said it was a privilege. So we are getting more than just Brother Akish. We're getting Kay, so that's two people that we are. And we did have my former colleague, didn't we, B? but he's now gone somewhere. That could have been because of the chaotic chairing I did, where I wasn't listening to people and stuff and talking over them, and it was bad. And then the Manchester student officers didn't come back either.
Yeah. So a lot of people are not coming back, but don't worry. Let's consider how you have learnt from that, and then we can go on to what the next steps might be. And so in some ways, what have you learnt?
Right now, I'm thinking, you know how Jim, so this is obviously not to flatter you, but every now and pretty much regularly, I always think one day this mentorship will come, or there's always, as I said, there's a poignant aspect to being mentored by you, like an older person. And then I used to think I'll become a big leader and then you won't be there. Well, I should think about my own parents, but I was thinking, well, now I don't think I'll be a big leader. I just think I'm heading towards 40. I wake up with a massive fit of anxiety and I think, will I get enough sleep? Will I be able to go back to sleep? I don't, they were saying, oh, Priti Patel and stuff and House of Commons. And I was thinking, no, right now in the summer when I was going a bit crazy, I was like, yeah, I want to be an MP. Now I don't. But what have I learned? Just now, the thought that came into my head, I wanted to say was, I was thinking, there might come a point where I almost become like you without flattering you, in the sense people come back to the meeting because I'm facilitating it rather than constantly wanting my voice to be heard. And I think because I'm making so many interjections, you could just see it practically. The Larissas are meeting. We could have had African Congress sisters speak, but if I take up the time, where will we get that? And all I was saying was like, yeah, Larissa, yeah, IWGB used me too, or Geordie or whatever. Jim, I feel very angry at Geordie. How do I get over that? It's an anger at my own self, isn't it?
Yes, actually.
Yeah.
So how do you get over it then?
I learned to forgive myself and I say, I definitely won't communicate with a man on WhatsApp for that. For well, I think what it was is I was looking, I was sort of, I think I think with this WhatsApp group or this group, I'm not as attached to it, but it's like somebody sends me a message and I feel happy, or like you believe they are your allies and therefore it's sort of being let down by a leader thing, wasn't it? It's what we saw on Thursday. We expect something of the leaders and then they let you down. I didn't expect such harshness that when I would complain about Islamophobia, that they would be so harsh towards me, or what he did with that group. I helped to build it up and to get rid of me. What would I learn? I learned that, like how I communicate with you, I will communicate very formally, and but then I do send people smileys. I think it's about how much are you communicating with people. And in my group, there are people I send communicate. For example, the person that we recently decided to support for the election, I just sent him a quick message. Thank you, brilliant. That's it, job done. So I think don't communicate with them too much. And right now, I understand the world. I hope, Jim, yeah, that God willing, me and you will, remain mentor and mentee, and that's something that won't fall apart, but everything has fallen apart. So the understanding, the allyship, it only lasts for a certain period of time, or certain things brings you together and then it goes away, and that's fine. Don't expect anyone to, I think the number of lists that I gave you, that they do follow. But the thing is, I've been quite lucky, haven't I? It's not even I known what I needed to know. It's like Allah has rescued me and shown each time things have gone wrong, it's only because I'm going to move on to something bigger, which is weird.
But okay, let's sort of consider that then. But the thing is, you've been lucky because there's something come along afterwards. Okay. And
we could praise you and say I've been lucky because I've had that. Well, yeah,
No.
IWGB came across by itself. How do we link you to it? The best linking I can say is I had at that time someone being kind to me, and maybe that's when I sent off that email and it got other people to get the motions
Yeah.
going. That could
And
be it. But
and let's go back to that bit about being angry with Geordie, because Geordie's not the only person you've been angry with. Geordie is not the only institution that you've fallen out with and produced a lot of
yeah,
anger.
LSHTM, I think, really got to me.
Yeah, yeah. Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, the BLM leader, I thought something went wrong, but I had that, Jim. You know what we saw on Thursday, the whole humility pill. They'll have that safe word for you, I think they call it, and that way they help the other members. I almost had that. The BLM leader, she was going to provide me with that. And when we went to meet you, that's the one she was saying, okay, Aysha, you need to stop talking. So I was going to
Yep.
learn all these basic rules of how much do you get to speak and not dominate and all of that. But somewhere it went wrong, and I can't just go around saying, well, she was a difficult person, which is true, but other people work with her. She's maintained her leadership. There
Yep.
is something I admire about her in that absolute authority. But I don't
But
think that's the kind of person I want to work with, though.
no, but you can learn from it, because the thing is that with any leader like that, is that, as you say, they present themselves to other people within the group in a way which is acceptable to them and makes them feel wanted and makes them feel, and you've come across slightly differently as someone who is about yourself and not about them. You haven't learned that humility pill, you haven't got that, and so therefore you clashed in that. In fun, in fact, you could say, Geordie, the people in London School, the people in BLM, all recognize that your style would break up, would produce, okay, it initially has some good results, but if you allow your ego to come into that, it would break up those groups in a way that is not really, and so they had to fight for their group to ensure it wasn't invaded with this egotism that you were bringing in. And I think that is the sort of one of the things you could see as a common thread between those three different encounters you had last year.
Yeah, actually, now that I was thinking, how did I see the BLM leader? Well, I saw obviously the difficult side of her, but what about when she went to meetings? How did she come across? She was actually quite softly spoken. She didn't attack the deans and whatever's that she saw of the faculties. She was, she even played the game like afterwards. She said, look, I stopped you there because I was trying to play the good guy.
Yeah.
So they're very, yeah, these guys are obviously activist, and whereas I've come out of nowhere at
Yeah.
2 years ago at the age of 35 um is yeah, it was a bit cruel, Jim, on Thursday. Like even Kay, she was like, oh yeah, I think he was going to say 7. The other one, Marvina, she goes like, oh yeah, this is what I was like at 17. I'm behind, but that doesn't mean I can't have my happiness of being a small time activist, of setting something small and cute up. I think yeah, you're right, Jim. I think I am at a crossroad. I decide either I'm right, carry on being as I am, which has
Yeah.
limited success. It actually has it has its success when I go to those meetings and I present a vision. At that point, I'm enthusiastic, I'm smiling, I'm full of energy. Then what happens in the group is obviously I'm not in the recruitment mode. I go into Aysha mode. I want people to hear my suffering and me. And then people run off, isn't it? Or I say, do you know how great I am? This is what I've done. This is what I've done. And then people run off. And actually learning to hold back and be like you. But then yeah, the thought that came, what happens when I almost become like you? No, I'm not flattering you, not Jim, but the chair. the chair. What is a functional chair? So when I become a functional chair, what happens to you? But no, we won't think about that. That's where I need to head. What is a functional chair? A functional chair
How do you become a
facilitates others. So how do
Yeah.
you do it then? You don't speak because you know what you're going to say, somebody else is going to say, like my mentor told me all those months ago.
So the thing is, I mean, I'm not going to say how you can be a chair because I'm not a good chair and I don't take on big chairing roles. And there's people who do and people who do it very well. I do, some chairing in different aspects. But
I thought you were a good chair. Why would you say you're not a good chair? What is it better chair then?
No, I'm not saying I'm not a good chair. I'm just saying that, I know some of those rules and I know how to maintain that order. And it's not, and definitely it's not about saying, look, I'm the chair, listen to me, because if you did that, that turns people off and they'll say, oh, well, we're not listening to you, we're leaving, because everyone's got that vote that they can stay or they can leave. And it is a matter of, okay, you can't learn how to chair until you've been in a meeting and learnt how, observed and listened and learned from the chairs of those meetings. Now, having one meeting or one group with one person, you learn certain aspects. Having groups with other people, you learn certain aspects. And I think you've been exposed to quite a few of those. But I still think that you've got a lot to learn in terms of how do you actually lead those groups. Which isn't a bad thing. You still, like you say, you might say you're 35, but you're still like a 17.
No, I'm 37.
37, but you're still like a 17-year-old activist, learning those ropes. You've had that wildness, that period when you just managed to, the destructive phase. Now you can learn how to build, because destructive phase, anarchism is fine, it's a way of life. But you need to learn how to build structures which will achieve, a bit like the student union, Lavina, Queen
Larissa.
Larissa. The student union had to be destroyed in some ways in order for a better student union to come out of it. But someone had to build that new student union. They couldn't just say, well, if you leave it, it will go back as it was. If you destroy Roddy's solidarity group, what do you have? Something will come up which will be exactly the same because no one is building it. If you destroy Black Lives Matter because you say they are not doing what you want them to do, then you've got to work out what it is and how it is you're going to be able to build back the structures better.
I think, to be honest, Jim, I just wake up full of anxiety. I'm still trying to figure out how to limit my emails, how to build up my boundaries with my own self and say, look, Aysha, you're going to sleep. Look, Aysha, you can't maybe do a poster. You want to do a poster? How about you don't do a poster and you free up time for yourself? And also, I think speaking to Marvina and before I was thinking, how do we get to the power where there are people who are getting to the power? She talked about amendments to the Kill Bill. She talked about policy. So I don't need to do that. So then I come back to the whole thing about this group. My vision is now to create a cute little environment. We don't know how many people will turn up. We don't know when we get to that day when nobody turns up. I don't think it's going to happen. And we just leave it at that little group that empowers each other's and actually allows discussion. And then for myself, I think, Jim, it's really difficult for me to think in an intelligent way. So I'm thinking now in a very simple way, what I learned, how do I apply it? And the very simple way to apply it for the next meeting, don't speak much, literally become an observer of my own organizing meeting. And that might be one of the simple and most effective thing I can do.
No, I think, yeah. So I think it's very fine, and I think I'm happy with you. We can continue to have our small group meetings, and we can invite different people to come and say what they're going to say. And we've had a lot of people say, demonstrate the discrimination against disabilities. Had people come and say about their experience with UCU, their experience with other issues, and then we had Akish's, unison talk, and so we've had lots of different experiences, and that's a valuable way of bringing people together and keeping it going. And I'm happy that we can continue to have those meetings, and let's see who comes. Let's see whether we can keep people coming back. At the moment, every time we have a new set of people, that's fine, apart from you, me, and Aki. No problem, no problem. If we can build and we can have, if we can keep people, one or two people coming, and we gradually build up, that's fine. That's the challenge, I think, with that group, right? Let's see.
Who don't come back. That's the issue, isn't it? Mostly.
So
Some do.
Yeah. So
why don't they come back? Is it we conclude they don't come back because I take up a lot of time speaking?
I don't think it matters that you take up some time speaking. I think they expect you to say things because you're the charismatic leader. Fine. But what they want is to ensure that you're listening to them and that you are displaying the kind of soft ego to them, which will enable them to grow into different roles. And you've got a hard ego for yourself, which gives you self-control and self-confidence.
I'm not flattering you, but I'm thinking of you, Jim, like how you praise me and stuff. You make the other person feel important, and then they're able to go off to do things. Because I was saying, I'm not sure what I've learned, but I know all the things I've done. And I think some of the things I wouldn't have been able to do if I didn't have your support. I wanted to send those angry emails to. I hope that, you didn't endorse them. By having that team of two, I could do the things I wanted, but ultimately, God willing, this group couldn't have happened without your help or that email to the MP. So
but those, as you said, angry emails, they make you feel good and make everybody else feel
not good. And people's overall view of is that they don't achieve things. My view is I left a legacy behind, didn't I? Because on the last day, when they announced the Queen's Award, they started off saying we value the cleaning and security colleagues. When is the last time they would have done that? That was it. It didn't go amiss with me. I noted that.
So that's your award. It doesn't say Aysha is fantastic. It says something that you contributed to. It wouldn't have happened without your efforts. No one else knows it. Nobody else in the world knows about it.
No, they don't. Yeah, a few people knew. Yeah.
Right. Okay, right. So that's one thing. We can continue this little group and we can see how well you can develop your soft and inclusive messages to other people while maintaining that anger on the inside. And you can have, a few people, one or two people where you can display that anger, but make sure you only display that anger to people who really, really, really understand what you're talking about.
Not to the WhatsApp group. That's why people run off, isn't it? And the people I lost.
Exactly, not to all of those people that you used to send angry emails to, because it doesn't do anything in terms of your life, right? Okay, what else can you do?
Oh.
Right.
So we said next meeting, not to speak much, to literally stay quiet.
Our meetings we've discussed, we can take that forward.
WhatsApp group, don't talk about my views of racism too much. Keep it aligned with how other people talk about racism. They talk about in a very indirect manner, whereas I talk about in a very direct manner, because I'm almost trying to use the platform to openly to say how hurt I feel like by Geordie and IWGB It's very personal. And I
Yeah.
don't think that's appropriate. I think when you're being personal, it's people will run off because
Yeah.
it's not the kind of respectful etiquette they expect.
Yeah.
You lose people that way. So who do you express that anger to? Maybe just explain it to people you trust like you and say, Jim, I feel angry about Jody. How do I deal with it? And then you talk
Yeah.
through it and you realize you
Correct.
feel
And you,
angry at your own self for not sticking to your kind of religious or professional values. In the end, the counselor said, stop sending smileys, look. And she compared, because I used to share the screen share. It's an interesting way of doing counseling. And she said, look, Jay, she doesn't use that many smileys. And I looked at all her messages, the ones she was sending to Geordie, there's hardly any smileys. And that's how you get taken seriously. And then you
yeah.
said something about being a feminist.
Okay. Okay. So now we're coming on to other things here. So, one is, I think, being a feminist is probably a very important aspect of
What do you mean
that.
by feminist? I know feminist means women's rights and stuff, and they're sort of anti-patriarchy, not sort of, they are sort of very much. But do you mean by feminist as in you look out for the fact that men might praise you? And it's not just men, it happened with me at LSHTM with that female academic, didn't it? Because she said, "Oh, Aysha, you're doing great work," and I handed her over the colleagues. Then she had the faces to make them all blue and whatever the crazy decolonizing art project, and that
Oh yeah,
was.
yeah,
And that's what they said on Thursday. That's what's going to happen to you again and again, Marvina, is people will use you if you have that ego.
yeah. But
And I said
using
that to you at that time. I said, Jim, I got played.
no, you didn't. You didn't.
That's my Achilles heel. I wrote that in an email because once I read it and I realized what that woman did to me, I was like, damn it, I got played because I sent a long email to everybody saying what a great work I had done. So I wanted desperately praise. And so then this woman picked up, oh, Aysha is the person who knows our cleaning and security colleagues. Let's get to her. She was very honest. She said, we wanted to do a project, but we didn't know the people. It's all back
Yeah.
to front, isn't it? Classic.
Well, it is. It is, and that's why you have to be respectful both ways. But in some ways, it was good of her to come and say she recognised you knew the people, and so therefore um, she could present your work in a way, and she presented it in a way that she understood it. Right now, I think the trouble is, and I felt bad, I felt a little bit, is that you got angry because what she presented wasn't what you wanted to be presented.
Yeah.
I mean, what she presented was absolutely, okay, it wasn't absolutely fine to you, but it was something which a lot of people didn't understand the point that she was making.
Yeah, you're right. Why did I get angry? I got angry. I got angry because I felt that she used me for some reason. That's why I got angry, isn't it? That she praised me. I got angry because she was meeting the director and then she didn't invite me. And we had already been to see the director. And that was Jim. I probably never thanked you, to explain it. I know what you did there. And I bet you knew the director meeting was not going to go anywhere, but you saw it as an opportunity to train me with the skills I don't have, where you took that time and you said, at this point, Aysha, you will pause and listen to what Liam says. At this point, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, yeah, this is what my dad says. Listen to the people, but you did it in a very structured, teachery way. And yeah, thank
Yeah.
you so much for everything.
So you got angry because she didn't take you to see the director with her when you'd already
Yes.
seen the director. And so, in a sense, you were being very, very you're sort of like, again, showing your ego, showing the fact that you only wanted to be, you needed to be involved in everything. Whereas, once you'd handed over what you'd done, let her get on with hers, present it in her way. You can say at the end, maybe she's done something. I mean, she will never do anything like that again because she's been scarred by life for life.
Yeah, she met with me and it was a mental health break time, and I was
Yeah,
horrendous. But
yeah, yeah,
and she knows she got it all wrong.
yeah. But there would have been other ways
There were
of
white
making.
people who thought, what is this blue faces? There was a lovely young academic woman. She says, I was thinking, I wanted to see this. What's blue faces got to do with this? And it's you pick a Camden artist because that's the trendy artist you want, but you're not consulting the people. What kind of art? The whole thing was crazy.
I mean, there's various definitions of feminism because we started on this with feminism,
Sorry. Yes.
and basically, I mean, I don't know. I'm not a feminist because, I support feminism and I think it's a good thing because I think that there's a lot of advantages on that. And I think, to my mind, all I would like to say is, as a feminist, I think supporting other women is going to be important, and it doesn't matter whether they believe exactly, you are a Muslim feminist with a particular view on discrimination that you've seen in this country. And there are a lot of other feminists who've seen other kinds of, and of course, there would be people who would say that you can't be a Muslim feminist as you comply to the male hierarchy in Islam. And, they would have a valid point of view. And you could probably argue with them for a long time, and you could destroy each other's feminism because you'd say, well, actually, I believe something slightly different. There's so many different ways that you can interpret that feminism and that support for women. And there'll be people that you would say, well, this person is a lesbian, or this person is from a different from a different group, which is a high class group, which is actually discriminating against cleaners or against cleaning operators and security guards. And you can say, well, that's not feminism. Well, there's so many different ways that women need to develop their own leadership skills, and I think we have to recognize that. Yeah, so I think becoming involved in feminism, listening to what other people have in terms of feminism would be quite good. Okay, what about no?
The
What
way I
about
interpreted your point about feminism was that I need to become quite clever at realizing men might, give you fake praise. Well done, Aisha, you're a great team member.
Yep.
Can you call up all the security colleagues and you do all that work? And then when it comes to people backing you or you being part of the in crowd, you realize very soon how you get kicked out. That's literally what you said at the beginning of our mentorship. You said unions are structures, and if you don't play by their rules, you will get kicked out. But the weird thing about me, Jim, was what you didn't expect is, like I said, each time I'm getting kicked out, I'm moving on to something bigger. Not that I'm saying, you know what, let's let this mentorship fall apart. I'll move on to something even bigger, because it gets a bit scary at that point, isn't it? Not that I'm saying that at all. But it's a weird one, isn't it? That's the Allah that kind of saves me each time.
Yeah, but you have to realize that you do only, I mean, that's not going to happen. If it doesn't happen, where do you get left?
Nowhere.
If you don't have, yeah, you're going to end up back where you were
when I first contacted you. Can I go to that?
Yeah, and if you then get sacked from your position and you can't rely upon someone to get you another job in the same place, with then you end up back exactly where you were 5 years ago.
Yeah.
You have to be, this is where your internal egotism has to be able to say, yes, I can do this and this, and I can see how I can build on my own skills to get somewhere else. But you have to then display that, and I'm probably not saying this right because I'm not nearly, I mean, if
this
it's
is what the
Marvina,
BLM leader actually said to me. I said, well, Unison. She says, but did you have to fight with Unison? I said, well, I didn't know the answers. He said, you could have just left them. Do I have to fight with people? Is it the fact that I move on to the next thing linked with me fighting with them? No, I could just leave in a very positive way And if I leave in a positive way, that's more clever. A clever person says, strategically calls the shot and says, you know what, my time here is up. It's not useful to me. I'm moving on to something bigger. Whereas for
Yeah.
me, I get kicked out and I'm dejected or rejected or whatever, ejected. And then I'm luckily bounced back. And I think in this time around, God willing, your support was very much key. It was a vehicle.
So, in a sense, what you're doing is the old English phrase of burning your bridges. You burn your bridges once you've got,
Yeah.
and fortunately, you have another bridge. You have something else to do. But at some stage, you don't, and then you'll get stuck on on some place where you don't really not want to know where you are. Yeah.
And actually, by not burning bridges, then I would have been able to bring those people. I could have advertised on
Yeah.
IWGB platform, and then I would have had that cross union, and they're well active. They like attending things. They're middle class
Yeah.
members. So yeah, burning bridges
Okay.
is not clever.
So, what I was going to ask you about, you think you've still got an open door to the solidarity group with Roddy? Is that right?
Open Door is in I can attend there. Open Door is in last week they talked about, is in this week, the one that's gone, and they talked about, yeah, we want to do anti-racist this, we want to do that. And one of the things that they got, I don't understand their politics and I'm not interested, but something about upcoming dates where they want to hold events and they got strikes and upcoming this
Yeah.
and that. And then they were having disagreements themselves. Do they do two events? Do they do separate events? Blah, blah, blah. But they're definitely interested in anti-racist things.
Which is good, which is a good starting point.
I'm guessing, Jim, you're seeing this as a good exercise in me
I'm
being
saying
able
this
to
is an
reach
exercise.
out as to others, and it has
I,
a purpose.
I, for me, solidarity. They're a left-wing group who have got, and some of them will be communists, and some of them will be anarchists, and some of them will be, other left-wing strands of the spectrum, which is fine. I've
I
got
always
nothing.
thought this is where I think I've gone wrong, Jim, because you just said left communism and all of that. See, I was very silly. I just, because I don't read and look up, I've noted all of this, that they're communist and stuff. But I just thought very simple, left meant good people and they were liberal and they were all into equality. That's very
Yeah.
simple. Yeah, not reading is a bit of a problem. At least I can
No,
speak to
it's not.
people.
And I mean,
And I'm not going to start reading
I would
either.
no, that's fine. And I would say yes. My view is left is good and right is bad. And
Yeah, it's very
you know,
simple.
right is authoritarian. But then the world, there's 9 billion people in the world. And you split them into two camps, or even if you say there's a center, three camps, and then you can split them again by something else, by religion, by sex, sex and sexuality. You can split them again by whatever else you want, and you can split down people, and ultimately you're in a different place than I am, because you've got your views and you've got you would define certain things as good, and I would define different things as good. Some of them might be overlapping, but some of them might not. But ultimately, if I just say the only people who are good are the people who've got exactly my worldview, I'm not going to get anywhere. And
No.
if you say the only people that I'm going to talk to are the people with exactly my, you'll end up not even talking to your mum and dad, because they have got different views which are not exactly what you want. And you'll end up, that's not going to be very positive. And people are social animals, and that means that they have to take a little bit from other people, and they have to leave a little bit from other people, and say, okay, I
Take what's
recognize.
good and leave what's rest behind. That's what they say in the religious lectures.
Yeah. And so, for instance, I'm using this solidarity thing as a sort of bit of an exercise. I'm not really interested in solidarity themselves, because
Yeah.
I know, what they want. But can you become a good member of solidarity, and learn how to organize a group and introduce your ideas on anti-racism and acceptance of different viewpoints, including the Muslim viewpoint, into a group like that. If you can, then you are amazing.
You're giving me an incentive. Yeah, I feel so angry with Jody. I've even stopped using the word amazing. I think, he used to use the word. I think after today, I'll just move on. Stop hating this person. Actually provided me some opportunities in the time, allowed me to achieve something. But
Yep.
I think it's not to subordinate myself. I think the biggest mistake I made was to subordinate. I should have realized, hang on a minute, I built the seed. I'm important. There's a reason why he's contacting me, because I'm the only dedicated person to this. But anyway, I'll stop going about Jody. Time to move on. Yes, I get
In
it.
some ways,
What I have to do,
in some ways, Roddy is
the next
exactly
Jody.
he's exactly the same as Geordie. And you know, you can
In that
complain.
Jody, in that Roddy hasn't been nice enough to me. We don't have a report. He
So
did say
you,
some nice things. He said,
yep,
"You're
yep,
strong." I came back and said, "Jim," he says, "I'm strong. Is it because
yep,
I'm manly?" He said, "Then your organization." And I thought, wow, he thinks I have an organization.
yep,
So
yep,
all of those things do make me, he kind of has, he's sort of responsible for my ego going crazy, isn't he?
yep, yep, yep.
And then obviously not
He
thanking
knows
me.
how, he knows how to cultivate your ego. So you can see that he is displaying those things about making other people feel good.
Yeah, he would be like, "Oh, welcome, Aysha." You'd be smiling and welcoming. He has good, obviously, if he didn't have good quality, how would he be chair of that committee? And
Yeah,
he does a lot of
exactly.
legwork, but he can never get himself elected, though, onto the, the elections.
So
So
in some ways, he doesn't have those qualities that Kyron and what's the other girl's name, and those other people who are get elected onto the UCU NEC. Now,
the
whether you want to
softer
go
skill.
whether you want to go to get election onto UCU NEC is another matter, and I'm not going to deal with that now. But I'm just going to say, can you become an effective member of that committee?
I know what I have to do. I have to go there,
Eventually,
speak to them
eventually
politely.
they will ask you to chair a session.
You're giving me like incentives. Yeah, it's true. I'll
Do you
just
want?
hand it to you. I'll hand it to you because I don't
Do
really
you
want
want
to
it?
chair.
I haven't sent an
I'll have
email
to
to.
do the organizing. I'll have to do the. I don't want to do the chair.
You can
I
still do your
rather
own.
you. I
You
want.
can,
Yeah, I do the organizing part, but I think you
we
should
can
do
do
the
our
chair.
organizing for our own little group. We can do our organizing for our own little group. What you're doing is you're going to this other committee to learn how they organize so that we can become better organizers of our group, and we can see whether we can introduce some of the ideas from this equality, anti-discrimination into the solidarity group, which hasn't really tackled that yet. But as he says, that's an issue that they do want to tackle.
Okay, it's going to
Do
be
you want?
long time work, so I
It's
could
going to
go
be.
to,
Yeah, yeah.
yes, months. So I'll go to this Wednesday, and I'll be respectful, and I'll
Yeah.
find out how does equality fit into their long scheme of things. What are their plans? How do they feel about collaborating with our group?
If you
And
go to this Wednesday's meeting, I will come as well for the whole meeting. I'll be there for the whole meeting. You don't have to go to the whole meeting, but I shall also email Roddy, copying you, just saying, look, we recognize that this has been, and we are learning from you, and we would like to continue. And just to present that sort of like olive branch to Roddy to say, don't think, we've changed. We're
yeah,
going to, we're going to be,
but just to let you know, Jim, I don't want to waste all of your time. It's in the long grass because, right, I think it might be in the short grass actually. It might be
yeah,
with the list of things they're about to launch. The
sure,
equality is
sure,
going to
sure.
be one of the things actually.
Yeah.
It might not be months away. It might be actually quite imminent. So yeah, it's good
Okay.
to get in there.
Don't talk about wasting my time, because then I'll say, look, the biggest waste of my time is spending all this time with you for the last year, because I think you are able to learn, reflect, and become someone more effective. Okay, that's my egotism.
I know. I think I was going to say, Jim, how do you feel about all the hours you give? This week, you've given now almost 1.5 hours, and then 4 hours, and then another hour was, or more than 1 hour was on Tuesday. How do you feel about all the time you give?
Do you know how to ride a bike?
I know how to go straight, can't turn it.
Okay.
Yeah,
So have you ever taught someone how to ride a bike?
no.
You teach your children, teach your grandchildren, teach your nephews, your nieces, your friends down the road, and some people take it like that, quick. They can learn, they get on the bike and in a couple of hours they can do it. Other people, they will spend a year learning, with training wheels, with this and that and the other, and you have to walk up and down with them, getting them to feel the balance and then eventually they'll learn how to do it. In the same way, you know, and you don't stop until the child says, I can do it, or they say, look, I don't want to do it, I can't do it, I'm going to go and do something else. I'm going to play baseball, I'm going to, go fishing or do something else they don't want to learn how to. And that is the same way with everything. And I'm saying, well, okay, I think you have the potential to be a leader. I have got no clue really because I don't know much about it. But we haven't failed yet. We haven't got to the stage where, it's actually impossible. Still that learning that you're doing. If you can take on board what was said in that meeting last Thursday, and I think you've sort of like listened and you've learned and you've reflected a bit on that. And if we can say, well, okay, how can you become that person who is going to be effective with encouraging other people to achieve their potential as well, which is what a leader does. I mean, a leader doesn't have to do anything themselves. They have to just make sure that their team is able to. If you can become that leader, then I think, we carry on. If you say, nope, that's it, or you show that you don't really want to know, then we finished. But that's fine.
No, I don't think we're finished. I think, yeah, I think I've scaled back my dreams and hopes. I think with all the anxiety and everything I'm suffering, I think I'm just happy being in the small world of small world, making difference to few people. Because you didn't become a political leader, but I guess in your work, you do important work.
Yeah, and I don't think I'm a leader. I recognize the people I've worked with who are leaders. People like, do you know Richard Hayes? He's sort of like, he's someone that I really do admire because he really did lead on some of the aspects that I was working on, 20, 30 years ago. And I would say that there's a few people who I would say are good leaders, and I can also say that there's a few people who are very bad leaders, who might have a position where they lead a particular group, but they're actually doing it in all the wrong ways, all the ways that I can say would be similar to what you would be doing in many ways. It's not about activism. It's not about being in a union. It's not about trying to have an agenda for anti-racism or anti-discrimination. It happens in every field, in statistics, in work, in the community, in family. You need to sort of like work out how you can become, a family head, and there's lots of people who, are then looked up to as the person in the family who gives wise advice and is able to help all of the others in the family. And I think that happens, because of the qualities that person has rather than anything else.
Yeah, I think it's about being positive, being listening to others, essentially copying you. I'm not flattering you, Jim. I think you are a leader, and I don't know why you keep saying you're not a leader. You've led this group in. I don't want to admit it. You're not the leader of the group, but as in no, you're not the leader of the group. As in you've you've led the meetings. Yes, that's it. You chaired the meeting, and that's a leadership role. in the,
doesn't
yeah,
mean say
that's
you're
it.
the leader. And also, I don't think, I don't think you're my disciple in that sense. I don't think that, a leader implies you've got people who are, following, who are, I mean, if you think of Jesus Christ, he had his disciples who then went out and gave lots of other disciples and things like that. I don't have any disciples, and I don't feel that's necessary, because what I want to do is, see whether other leaders can mobilize and organize the people to do their things, because I don't actually have any values myself.
I
I'm sort of
think
very much a sort of person who feels I like the idea that I'm like the gel in an experiment. You just put the gel in and the things go on and they can complete their experiments, but the gel itself is unchanged.
I'll have to think about what you just said there. You're just a constant there,
Yeah,
like a support, as I say, bedrock or something, bedrock of support. You're
yeah,
there as a if the gel is there as a what do they say, consumable, as a thing that you need. What is it? A resource,
a
a
resource.
constant resource that you need for that to be facilitated. Yeah, that's exactly what I think. I think as more time has gone, I've realized, and you've helped me realize that I'm not, it's not to follow you, it's not to actually copy your writing style. And it got to a point now, I don't even wait for you to write up anything. I
Yeah,
don't want you to write up anything because I'm not going to
yeah,
take bits of your chunks of your writing anymore. And you helped me realize when you said, oh, people are coming because of your emails, because that's the other
yeah,
thing. People are coming because the few people I get, some read the email and it gets to them. And end of the day, the way my mailing list was done, which was mostly UCU committee, it makes sense that out of 500 people, I'm not getting even 10% because these were the wrong people. It made
yeah,
sense. I know why I contacted them at the time, because I wanted an inter-union event, but it was the wrong crowd. We now
yeah,
know what typical UCU committee is like. They're not really interested in equality. It's not something, I think when BLM happened, the union did not reach out to BLM groups in that active way. And I think, it wasn't just the LSHDM, I think it's happened everywhere. Unions
yeah,
remained as unions in their little bubble, and because they didn't embrace BLM, we're now seeing the impact why this strike is failing so badly. Had they
yeah,
embraced BLM, they would have got a lot of people in the workplace. What happened
yeah,
instead was it was the BLM group which was triggering internal reviews. It's not LSHDM, not the only one who had internal reviews. It was in my new workplace, they also had an internal review. So it just goes to show, why did the workplaces need a BLM group actually if the union took charge of the whole thing? Because union never took charge of the whole thing. And it's the BLM group that gave people the strength to say, oh, and also why I think our group is not working. People don't need a talking shop, as people say, because they've already had that talking shop facilitated because of those BLM safe spaces, as it were called. So it's an interesting period, but
but
yeah.
we can continue our group and then see whether there is some space that we can inhabit, which brings, which we can use. And I don't mind that at all, and I think that's quite a nice thing to do. But there's other things we can do to expose you to other in learning opportunities. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you so much, Jim. Really appreciate it. And then we'll go on to YouTube. Yeah. Is there anything I can do to make things easier for you? Because you
No,
give a lot of time.
yeah, okay, that's fine. I mean, you know, this is we have to you give as much time as is needed to get to the end result, and I think that in some ways the end result for you is going to be different from the end result for me. But I've learned so much from this that I really feel grateful for this
Really?
opportunity.
What have you learned, Jim?
Okay, so as I mean, taking where I was back then in the union and thinking, yes, we can do lots of things through the committee, through, doing this and that and the other, but only having a single point of view. I only had my own point of view. What has happened here is I've suddenly realized that every single person, I mean, not every single person, lots and lots of people have got alternative views of point. And learning how to listen to your point of view and thinking, okay, it's not put very well, but I recognize the point of view and what it means. And I recognize the kind of experience that you've had means that I can now listen to other people and realize they don't, no one says exactly what they've been through. It would be too traumatic to take, all of the experiences of, racism or failure or this or that or the other. We only present what we have time for, but in the background is a lot of other things that we should take into account when we talk to someone else. And that applies to you and to the idea of having an inter-union fight for equality. That applies to my work when I'm working with junior statisticians in Tanzania. That applies to people who want to understand data science in my other projects. That applies to everybody. And so that is the kind of thing that I've learned.
You learned that most people, unlike me, are not going to say it all on the paper, but
Even
because
you
even I don't say it. Yeah, I held back. Sorry, yeah, I held back on Thursday, but I think Kay was very honest. The reason why I might be feeling feelings might be something I might be disconnected, might be due to survival mechanism of how to deal with having had bad experience or abuse and so on and so forth. Yeah, but I guess it's made you think there could be more underneath the surface. Let me try to think of those possibilities. Oh, yeah. Thank you very much, Jim. And at this point, as you were talking about data science, I was thinking I'm extremely privileged to have had all that time from an important professor. You're the only professor who could be bothered to help me. So yeah, good luck to you.
Let's see how it works.
It's been going for a year. So yeah, thank you so much. I am most grateful, Jim.
Okay. Take care.
Have a lovely weekend. See you on Wednesday.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.